Hi everyone, welcome back to G Chats with your host G. We are in the G spot once again, and in this episode, I am very excited to tell my UTI horror story, my 2 year long UTI horror story. And so I feel like most of you probably know the general synopsis that I battled with UTIs, but TikTok is obviously limited on how long I can speak in a video. The max is 10 minutes, so I can't convey my story in 10 minutes, but I should be able to do it in maybe 20-25 minutes. We will see. But in this episode, I really just wanted to share my story because I feel like it's very important to understanding why and how I started the business. I did in the very first episode talk about me, talk about the business, how I got into the space, but I didn't share the full story of the UTI. Honestly, the 2 year UTI battle, it was really rough. So without further ado, because I will start dropping in and telling you guys like what it was, let's just get right into it. So my very first UTI, I was a sophomore in college. So this was 2019, fall semester of 2019. I remember feeling the most uncomfortable sensation while I was peeing. Like truly, it was such an uncomfortable sensation. I remember going to the bathroom and I would like pee and then I would get up and I would have to sit back down and pee. And it was just something that it was so abnormal. Like I've never had this before. So I knew something was wrong. Like immediately I was like, something's weird. But the kicker was I was on my period. So I kind of psyched myself out and was like, this is because of my period. Like that's why this is happening. But it was really weird because again, it was so random. Like I've never had this before. I honestly never had like a super sensitive vagina or like very like irritation to pads. Like I never had any like vaginal issues from like the time that I started getting a period at 10 years old to the time that I was 20, 21. Like I just never had any issues. Well, I was 20 at this point. So it was just like so random. I was on my period and I was in physics lab specifically. And I remember not being able to literally like sit properly, like on the stool. I just could not focus in that lab. My best friend, who was my roommate, who also we were in the same major. We were both studying to be biomedical engineers. She was my lab partner. So we had the same class. And she was just like, Gee, are you okay? Like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. Like, I'm on my period. So I'm uncomfortable. Cause again, like there's a stigma. I was just like afraid to talk about vaginal health. And I was so afraid to tell anyone because I didn't even know what the hell was going on with my own body. So I was just like so scared. I'm like, how do I bring this up? Who do I tell? Do I even say anything? And I remember briefly after lab calling my mom and telling her like I'm uncomfortable. And my mom was like, maybe it's your pad. And I obviously didn't give my mom enough details, but I was just so afraid because again, there's a stigma around vaginal health. And I did grow up in an ethnic home. So like, honestly, vaginal health issues were only in my head chalked up to intimacy and sex. And I was just so afraid of that stigma. So I just was like, oh my God, like, I don't know how I got this. And I was so afraid of like the stigma associated with vaginal infections. So I was like, you know what? It's okay. This will go away in a few days after my period. And I remember just like ignoring it. Like my vagina felt like it was on fire, but I was like, I'm going to ignore it. And my urethra was burning and burning and burning. And every single time I peed, it was hell. Like it just burned. And I remember later in the week then I started having back pain and I it didn't help because I was also having a little bit of a cold. So I was like stuffy and stuff. It was the fall time. And I remember the one day my back was hurting so bad that I ended up getting a fever, and the fever was like at 102. And I yelled at my best friend, who was my roommate. I was like, put the heater on because I was having the chills. I was having a fever. And I was like shaking. I was so cold. I was like, turn the heat all the way to 90. And she's like gee, like, you're insane. It's literally boiling hot in here. And I was like, I'm freezing, to the point where she was like, I'm calling the ambulance. Like, you got to go to the hospital. Like, you're literally yellow. You look so pale. Your back is hurting you for whatever reason. Like, she's confused because she's like, aren't you just having a cold? Like, this is so scary. So she called the ambulance. So I went in it. Now I'm like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. I wish like, none of us had, okay. So to preface, like, I didn't have a car on campus. Neither did my best friend. Like, none of us had a car on campus. So it wasn't like, oh, let's just like drive. We didn't have a car on campus. I didn't own a car. Like, none of us were car owners. And also to preface, like, I was under my dad's insurance, so I did have coverage. So I wouldn't, if I wasn't able to go in an ambulance, I wouldn't. I mean, regardless, I needed to go to the hospital. So honestly, I don't even know why I'm giving myself like a explanation as to why I went in the damn ambulance, because I literally had to go to the hospital, and you'll understand why in just a few seconds. But like, I had to go to the hospital because things were getting serious and I didn't even know. So my best friend thankfully called the ambulance. She called 911. They came and got me. I went to the hospital near my university, and obviously my parents are my emergency contacts. So my parents came to the hospital, and of course their first reaction was to make sure I was okay. Like, they were just so worried about me, wanted to make sure I was okay. And I remember when I went in, like, I was chalking up the fever to my like cold. I was like, yeah, like my throat's hurting. I'm a bit congested, but nothing like crazy. I just have like a super high fever. And the lady was like, okay, like any other symptoms? And I was like, yeah, like my back's been killing me. She's like, where? And I started pointing, and she was like, do you have any pain while you're urinating? I was like, yeah, actually, that's been bothering me for like a week. And she was like, oh, here's a cup, go pee in it. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't understand why she was collecting this urine sample. So, and honestly, now that I think back to that time, I am like, wow, like I truly did not know enough about my body, which duh, like a lot of us don't, and that makes sense. In hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, like I was just your regular average young girl, like college girl, teenage girl, whatever, like starting out her adulthood, and knew nothing about her vaginal health, which is 90% of young girls in this country and globally. So I think about it now, how much I've educated myself and started researching all of this, that I'm just like, dang, like I really knew nothing about my vaginal health and about my body. And so I peed in this cup, and I remember they ran a urine analysis, and they came back within, I'd say like 15 minutes, and immediately was like, yeah, you have a urinary tract infection. And I was like, oh, I do? Okay. So obviously I'm like, I don't know how I got this. Like, I don't know. This has never happened to me before. Like, I don't know how I got this. And I remember then they were like, how long have you been having burning? And I was like, like I'd say at this point, guys, like I was done with my period, and I have like maybe 6-day long periods. So remember, this started at the start of my period, and I was already done with my period. So this was like a week, if not over a week at this time. So when I said that I've been having this burning like my entire period and stuff, they were like, we're going to send you for a CT scan. So that's exactly what happened. They sent me for a CT scan, and I remember within an hour, the physician came back, and he was like, ma'am, if you would have waited maybe another week, you could have like had sepsis and died, because your urinary tract infection is spreading to your kidneys. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean it spread to the kidneys? Like, I know nothing about this. So I was like, my kidneys, oh my God. My mom's like, oh my God. My dad's like, oh my God. Like, everyone's like, oh my God. And they're like, yeah, like, and sepsis can kill you. And if you don't know, sepsis is when the infection spreads to the bloodstream. And yeah, then it can cause death. So I just like was panicking. They were like, we're going to start your dosage of antibiotics. And let me tell you guys, after that first UTI, unfortunately, I have never been the same ever since. Never. I've never been the same. I want to say even now, I still have lingering effects of all of my UTIs, but that was the beginning of what felt like a never-ending cycle. I will say that I'm very blessed and very grateful to say that I haven't had a single UTI since taking my own probiotics, and being the founder of my brand, taking my own probiotics and understanding the space. However, from that, like, I still suffer with some of the symptoms and the repercussions of all of my UTIs. But that was the start of just like a tragic 2 year long like spiral. So I got that first UTI. I was prescribed Keflex or Ceflexin, which is like the first line drug usually. So I was prescribed that. And I just want to preface, like, I had a very, very unintelligent doctor in the ER. This doctor said that my tonsils looked good, so there was no way that I was having a cold. I don't know like what that meant. Like, I was congested and I was having a sore throat. So I definitely was having a cold. I was worried at first that I had strep throat. And that's what was causing my fever. Again, wasn't thinking of the UTI. And then he told me, there's no way you have strep throat. Only babies get strep throat, which we know is not true. So I was like, what? When he said that, I was like, dude, what? What do you mean? Like, only babies get strep throat? So I did not have a very smart doctor in the ER anyways, so a lot of it was being explained to me by the nurses. And like my dosages, my like first dose of antibiotics was given to me by the nurse and stuff like that. So then we fast forward to me taking my dosage of antibiotics. So I took my antibiotics, and I remember finishing my antibiotics, and I did not feel right. Like I finished it and I was like, I'm still having burning. Something's off. Something's weird. I don't know what's going on. And I remember telling my mom this, and I let it persist for maybe a week until I was like, I got to go back to the doctor. So me just telling my doctor. So now I'm seeing, at the time I was still with my pediatrician. So I was with the peds and I was telling my doctor like, hey, I'm still having this burning, but I did have a UTI. And without culturing me, nothing, he was like, I'm going to give you macrobid. I was like, okay, sure, great. Like, okay, again, I'm just doing everything that the doctor is saying to do. So I'm like, okay, fine. I take macrobid and I'm on macrobid. And this is actually where I got relief. So I think I effectively cleared the infection. And then I was good. I was good for about 3 weeks that lasted. And so this happened in October. Fast forward, I take it for a week, the Ceflexin, and then I don't feel good for another week after that. So then like third week of November, I take macrobid and I'm good. So maybe like 2-ish weeks go by, but I remember it was right before Christmas. So December, I go and I pee. I'm on winter break. I pee and I feel the zinging, almost like a pinch when and anytime I'm asked like, how did I know I had a UTI, other than that first UTI that I had that I feel like I didn't fully understand, every other UTI after that was very glaringly a UTI. Like, it doesn't play games with me. And I will explain why that's so important, because I've had to rewire my brain because it's caused so many problems with how I pee that sometimes I will feel a little burny when I pee and psych myself out that I'm having a UTI when I know I'm not having a UTI. I know I'm not, because I know what a UTI feels like and it doesn't play games with me. But I'm just so traumatized from all my UTIs. So I would feel that like pinch at the end of my urination. So like the stream would come out, and honestly, it felt like I was pissing out a rock. And then like once the flow was going, it was when I would stop that pinch. Oh my God. I'm like sweating talking about it. Like traumatized. So that pinch, oh my God, what an awful, awful sensation. It would be like a pinching feeling, and I would scream. And I remember crying. I'm like, I'm having a UTI. And so I went to the pediatrician and I went there, I peed in a cup. They confirmed with a urine analysis, like a dipstick, yeah, you have leukocytes and nitrites present, so you definitely are having a UTI. Sent it out for culturing, and then after that, honestly, I'm not going to go through like every single instance, but just know literally, if it wasn't every month, it was every other month I was getting a UTI. It was UTI after UTI after UTI. And I remember my fall semester, this was around March. I remember telling my friends, I started like opening up to people that I was suffering with UTIs. And we were sitting at in the library that where all the engineers were. And I was talking to my friends, and I remember telling them, and one of them was a guy actually. And I was saying, I was like, peeing is literally my biggest nightmare. And the guy was like, that's so upsetting because like peeing is the most relieving feeling on the planet. I was like, must be nice. It's no longer relieving for me. Like, it doesn't feel good to pee anymore. Like, I literally get on the toilet and I'm either burning, or if I'm not burning, I'm afraid. Like, I have so much anxiety when I pee now because I'm horrified of feeling the burning. So I was just like screwed. I was so screwed. Like, literally every time I saw the toilet, it was like a nightmare. And so I remember this is where things started to take like a really bad turn, and it's where I started developing antibiotic resistance. So consistently I was being prescribed Ceflexin. And the one time in the summer, I was home for summer because like we were off of college, and I was actually making Chinese food for my family. I was getting my own apartment in college and stuff like that. I was going into my junior year. But the point is like, I loved cooking, and I was like making like stir fried chicken and stuff like that. And I told my parents and my brothers, and they were like, you should make it for us. So I was like, okay. So I started like making stir fry chicken and vegetables and whatnot. And I remember my mom still remembers this day, but I remember like saying like, hold on, like I gotta pee. And I went to the bathroom, not thinking anything of it. It's wintertime. I go and I pee. And I pee, and I don't know why I didn't fully empty out my bladder, and it kind of burned, but I was like, no, it's not a UTI, it can't be. And again, it was two months since I got a UTI, so I'm like, no, it can't be. I go and I'm sauteing the chicken and stuff like that, and then I'm like, shit, I gotta pee again. So I go back to the bathroom, I pee, and it's like I'm not emptying. And this was actually new for me. Like, I was having pure incontinence and frequent urination. That wasn't usually what I was having. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, the UTIs were so freaking traumatizing that I can't fully remember all of the symptoms. It's just psyched me out so bad that like I can't pinpoint all of my symptoms, but I remember this day in particular, like I had frequent urination and like incontinence. Like, I couldn't fully empty out my bladder. So I had to pee every couple of seconds. And my mom recognized, like, I just kept going back and forth, like every 3 minutes. And my mom's like, are you good? Like, are you okay? What's happening? And I was like, I don't know. I keep peeing. And that, like, I'd say maybe by the like 8th pee, that pinch feeling came back, and I knew it. I was like, I have a UTI, and I started crying. Like, I was losing it. Now, a lot happened this day. Number one, the AC in my parents' house broke, and it was summertime, so it was like 95 degrees. The house was like so hot. I was having a UTI, and it was also a weekend, lucky me, and the doctor's office closes on the weekend at noon. So I drove so fast to the doctor's office just to get like a urine sample, and they prescribed me Ceflexin. And I was like, okay, I'm on Ceflexin. And so this is late August, for the record. So school started like 1 week later. So it was summer break, but we were starting school again. And I finished my antibiotics. They put me on it for 10 days, Ceflexin. And that the 10 days led up to a Friday, I believe. And so Friday rolls around. I'm taking, or it was a 7-day dose. I can't remember, but I remember Friday I took my last dose, and I came home that weekend. And I was in my room. I peed, and I felt the burning, and I lost my mind because I couldn't believe. So this was the first time that like I took it, And I knew immediately after finishing like that I was still having a UTI. Every other time was maybe like a little uncomfortable or something, but this was like a true, I'm having a urinary tract infection. Like this did not go away, or it's a new one. So that at the time, I didn't know enough about my body. I was messed up in the head because I was like, did I just catch a new infection? Like how? Actually, how? And you start to go insane because I'm showering, I'm wiping front to back. I am doing every single cliche thing that they tell you to do, and I'm still having this. I was like, no, this is like I'm still having this burning. What the heck? Like I was like, no, this is insane. This is ridiculous. So again, I drive so fast, and this is like in the morning, like 10:45, 11 o'clock. I call the pediatrician. I'm like, can I come? And they're like, yes. I drive so fast. They're like, if you can make it, take my dad's car. And I drive so fast to the pediatrician's office, and I'm chugging water. I am drinking so much water, and I pee in a cup, and the pediatrician comes in and obviously asks me, are you drinking enough water? And I'm like, yes, I'm drinking enough water. So much so that the nurse actually came in and was like, she's drinking plenty. Look at her sample. And my sample was like clear. So the doctor finally says, well, you were on cephalexin. I have suspicions that you actually have antibiotic resistance to it since it's not working. So I'm going to give you macrobid. And I, right there and then, am like, hold on, I've taken macrobid before and I don't know about it. Like, I'm scared because I've been having all these UTIs. So he's like, okay, fine, we'll try Bactrim. I'm like, okay, great. So he gives me Bactrim. I take it. I go maybe like 2 months without a UTI, but the UTI comes back. So then they start flip-flopping me between macrobid and Bactrim, macrobid and Bactrim. So then I get put on macrobid, and I am in fact resistance later. I develop resistance to macrobid. So at this point, I am aware that I'm resistant to cephalexin, resistant to macrobid, and then I kept getting the UTIs, right? Kept getting them over and over and over and over and over again. And this happened for my entire sophomore year and pretty much all of my junior year until the spring semester of my junior year. In junior year, the spring semester, you start capstone, which is senior design. And I get partnered with a group, and we were like supposed to do something with like centrifuges and BMAC, which is blood marrow aspirate concentrate. Very very much like stem cells, that kind of stuff. Something happened with the actual sponsor of our group because each group has like a different company that they're working for in a totally different project. So our sponsor kind of falls through, and it's like week 8 into the semester. So we're well into the spring semester, my junior year. And our professor kind of says like, hey guys, this project's not going to work out because the sponsor pulled. So you basically have to come up with your own experimentation. So at this point, I'm like, what should we do? What's a problem that we should solve? And when I start thinking about it, like, what's a problem that I want to solve? What's a problem that we should solve? I'm like, oh, we should solve my UTIs. Like, we're biomedical engineers. I'm getting all these UTIs. We should solve my problems with UTIs. So I do like a brief search. Like in this time of the project is falling out, she kind of gives us like a 2-3 week time period of trying to decide what we want to do. So in this time period, ironically, I have an appointment to go see a urologist. So I go to the urologist, and this honestly was my sign. So the project for Capstone was falling through with our original sponsor. We're kind of given this like hint of you might have to create your own project of some sort. I go and I see this specialist, and the specialist essentially sees me, looks at my record, does a bladder scan, all this stuff, and freaks me out in the bladder scan because basically tells me, you're not emptying all of your bladder out. It looks like you have an active UTI right now. And I'm like, what? I don't even feel anything. What are you talking about? And so, yeah, like had me spiraling. I was like traumatized from that appointment. But anyways, we were sitting and we were talking, and the specialist tells me, yeah, it's obviously abnormal to have so many UTIs, but what I will say is that most people grow out of urinary tract infections. And I was like, come again? What do you mean people grow out of UTIs? She was like, yeah, like as they get older, it just goes away. And I was like, so you're just telling me I got to deal with this for the next, I don't know, 5 years, and then like it'll just go away? What? So I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't want to deal with this for 5 more years. And she's like, yeah. She was like, but alternatively, what we usually recommend in people who are battling with this, there's 2 ways that we go about this. For some people, what we will do is we will give them like a low dose of antibiotics to take every single time that they have sex. And for other people, we will give them a long-term course of antibiotics. She was like, so given you and your situation, we're going to do 6 months of antibiotic therapy consistently. And I look at her and I'm like, oh, whoa, hold on. Now, remember, I'm in my junior year now. So my education is becoming more rigorous, more like clinical, if that makes sense. So I'm not just like studying chemistry, like Chem 1, Chem 2, Physics 1, Biology 1. Like now we're getting into bioethics, engineering, physiology, and anatomy. We're getting into like human body clinical stuff. We're learning about birth control. Like it's becoming more like real life experiences and putting medicine in like the real world and not just like textbook medicine. So we had an entire conversation in bioethics about the growing concern about antibiotics and how they are constantly improperly prescribed, and or more just like treated as, oh yeah, like anybody who's having a sore throat, here's antibiotics and things like that. So I'm like now immersed in this field truly, and I'm starting to recognize like, there's a bit of an issue with antibiotics, and maybe I've been thrown antibiotics improperly and stuff, like the thoughts in my head. And so she's like, we're going to do 6 months of antibiotic therapy, like long term. And I was like, wait, I'm already resistant to 2 different kinds of antibiotics. We're going to do 6 months of a new one? Like, is that safe? She's like, yeah, like we could start it today. And I'm so happy. I literally was like, I'm going to think about it. I don't want to pull the trigger on anything. Like, please let me just like sit on this, think about it. She's like, okay, yeah, no problem. So I left that appointment. I was like so pissed off because I was like, really? I came to this appointment to get hope. And the hope was we're going to put you on 6 months of antibiotics. Like that is not hopeful at all. I was so frustrated. I was so angry. I was so upset. So I was like, you know what? There has to be another solution. And what do you know, guys? I went on my laptop that I was borrowing from the university because I did not have money to have my own laptop. So I had a laptop given to me from the university to borrow for the 4 years that I was at school. I open it and I go on PubMed and CBI and start reading medical journals, scholarly articles, research papers, because these are things that now at this point, spring semester of junior year, I'm about to go into my senior year. Now at this point, I've been very like immersed in the clinical settings. I have now gained the knowledge to be able to essentially read, dissect, understand research papers. We're writing our own research papers. We're designing experiments, conducting experiments. So the course is much more rigorous. So I have like the training at this point. So I start reading these research papers, and this is where I cracked the code. And I found the world of probiotics. And it amazed me to learn that probiotics are good bacteria that's in the vagina, and all the antibiotics that I was actually taking were depleting the vaginal microbiome and my gut microbiome of all of the good, diverse, healthy bacteria that both of these microbiomes needed to protect me from UTIs. And I learned that the UTIs I was getting was coming from my gut, my poop. And I learned that the E. coli, which is so simple to think about, E. coli is in our poop. And the reason it's seeding into my bladder and into my urinary tract or contaminating the urinary tract is because it's overgrowing in my gut, and I don't have enough good bacteria in my vagina to protect me from this E. coli. And that was the aha moment. I was like, oh my God. And I started to learn that having a period and your hormones when your estrogen is low, that is actually what can make you more susceptible to a UTI. When your hormones, your estrogen dips and that is low, unfortunately, this can kill off some good bacteria in the vagina. I was also sick, so my immune system was weakened. I was on my period and I was incredibly stressed out, all of which can make you lose good bacteria in your vagina. And that was the clicker. So I got this UTI because my vagina was already in a dysbiotic state, meaning I did not have good bacteria in my vagina at all to protect me. And more than likely, my gut microbiome was off balance and I had an overgrowth of E. coli in my gut. And I saw research papers that literally showed how women who are suffering with chronic and recurring urinary tract infections actually also have dysbiosis in their gut, where there's this overgrowth of bad bacteria, E. coli, in their gut. This aha moment like made it all click to me. I was like, oh my God. And I kept researching and researching and researching. And it worked out perfect timing where I told my team, I was like, guys, we have to do a study on like probiotics and how important they are for the vagina. So that's kind of what our group focused on, is showcasing the power of probiotics for vaginal health and for urinary tract infections, bacterial vaginosis, and yeast infections. Because if you didn't know, then when you're on all these antibiotics, you then get a yeast infection and it's just a hellhole to be in. And so we started studying that. We studied that the rest of the semester, and I continued my digging, reading scholarly articles, research papers, and all of that throughout the entire summer. And fall semester was the very last urinary tract infection that I got. I got a UTI that fall, and this urinary tract infection left me pissing blood. It was the first UTI that I ever had that I peed blood. I literally never, ever peed blood, at least visible blood to that extent before. But this was like atrocious. I was peeing visible clots of blood. I was in so much pain. I rushed myself to the ER. We had like fall break or something because I drove myself, and I was there overnight until like 3 a.m. because like the waiting room was like insane. Now remember, this is like post COVID at this point. So it was insane. Like the waiting room just had so many people. Like it was crazy. Everyone's masked, everybody's sick. It's the fall time. I have this atrocious urinary tract infection. And this one like altered how I peed forever. So I had this UTI and my nose is like itching. Oh my God. So I have this UTI. I'm prescribed Bactrim because at this point, this is my understanding that it's the only one that works for me. I'm prescribed Bactrim. I take my course of Bactrim. And then 1 week after I finish it, of course, lucky me, guess what? I go and I pee on the toilet and I am Actually, wait, no, I got that wrong. It wasn't a week. Never mind. I did not finish the course of treatment. I started the antibiotics for the first 48 hours. And at first, I felt good. I was like, okay, great. I'm taking this. We're killing the bacteria. I'm good. Well, guys, I was not good because what do you know? Literally, and I'm not joking, literally within 48 hours, I sat on the toilet and I peed and I saw blood again. And I freaked out. I was burning. I was twinging. I was having incontinence. I was freaking out. I started crying. I'm like, I'm pissing blood again. Like, what the hell? And I called the urologist or my family doctor. At this point, I'm seeing like an adult, like family medicine doctor. And I'm like, I'm peeing blood again. And they're like, well, we don't have your urine culture results yet. And I'm like, did you order a susceptibility test? Like, I need to know. At this point, I'm calling the shots. I'm like, am I resistant? Am I this? Am I that? Like, I'm asking for the resistance testing, the culturing, all of that. So they're like, yeah, we're going to do a susceptibility test. I'm like, okay. So literally the following morning, now I'm being gaslit on the phone. They're like, it is normal to pee blood after 48 hours. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, they're like, you definitely had a severe UTI, so it can be normal to just like pee blood. And I was like, no, it's not. So that was the thing. Like, I'm being gaslit and dismissed as like, oh, this is normal. I'm like, it's not normal. What do you mean? I should not be peeing blood after taking the antibiotics for 2 days. So I end up saying, okay, fine, I will wait. They tell me to continue my doses. They're like, we're not prescribing you any other antibiotic until we find out if you are resistant. I'm like, I'm telling you I'm resistant. But I do understand not wanting to prescribe me a new one, because it's like they don't want to prescribe me, let's say, like Cipro, and then I'm resistant to Cipro. Like when they do a susceptibility test, they're testing for susceptibility against a whole bunch of different antibiotics. So I do respect that, but like still, I was having an active UTI and I just had to like deal with it overnight. So I take Pyridium, which is the painkiller medication for UTIs. I take that and I go to bed, and I wake up 8 a.m. I get a phone call, and the health network's like, yeah, so you're resistant to Bactrim. I'm like, no shit. So I've now at this point developed resistance to 3 different kinds of antibiotics. And so they put me on Cipro. So I take Cipro, except I took Cipro and my arm goes numb. I took my first dose and my arm just went numb. It started tingling. I felt dizzy, and I was like, hell no, take me off of this, because I started researching and I learned that Cipro has a black box label. My pamphlet had a black box label, meaning that it's incredibly dangerous. It can cause seizures. It can cause neurological issues. And I was like, nope. So I call and I'm like, I don't want to take it. My arm's tingling. I'm having a side effect. Doctor tells me I'm crazy. There's no way that the tingling in my arm is from Cipro. They tell me that I'm just anxious. The doctor literally told me, you're having anxiety. There's no way it's from the Cipro. You're good. And I was like, no, do you understand? I'm not taking this. Look at my susceptibility results, and you need to tell me what, because I'm not seeing the susceptibility test. Like I'm not looking at the panel inside of the microbiology lab. Mind you, at this point, I'm working inside of the rivalry hospital's microbiology lab. So I'm familiar with all these tests, but like I can't see the test with my own eyes because it's going to like a different hospital or whatever. I'm not in the lab like looking at my own results. The doctor though can see the lab's like stuff. I can't. So I don't have access to Epic. I can't see that. So I'm like, can you tell me what the hell I'm not like resistant to? So then they put me on amoxicillin, and I take amoxicillin, and finally I felt better. And at that point, I went out and I bought a probiotic that had 40 billion CFUs of lactobacillus. The only problem here is that this probiotic that I was taking was made with prebiotic fibers, which was potato starch. And potato starch causes a lot of gas, bloating, indigestion, just a lot of uncomfortable gastrointestinal issues. But I was like, if I could take this and never get another UTI again, in the meantime, then so be it. And so I started taking that. I was having gas, bloating, all of the uncomfortable gastrointestinal problems, but I didn't have a UTI in like 4 months. And that was a streak. That was a streak for me. Like I had not went that long without a UTI. So I stayed with that product until I was able to create my own. And so once I launched my own, because I was like, I shouldn't have to fix one thing and trade it off for something else, like gastrointestinal problems. If I'm going to fix my UTIs, I shouldn't have GI issues after it. So that was kind of me. That led me to build this criteria of what a gold standard probiotic would look like and what it should look like. And I was like, I'm going to be the change. I'm going to make it. And I did. And then I made With Clarity and with Meraki Co. And I started taking my own product, and I've been UTI free for almost 3 years since taking my own product. I still take my own product. I swear by it. I love it. And yeah, that is the journey. But I still sometimes have incontinence while I'm peeing. I do sometimes have burning. I will say it did mess up with my pelvic floor because my pelvic floor muscles are so tight and tense, and relaxing them when I pee is very hard for me to do because there's a lot of trauma, stress, and story there. So it's left me with some lasting symptoms. Sometimes I feel that burning sensation because of my pelvic floor muscles being so tight. And I have to remind myself, it's not a UTI, Gianna. It's not a UTI. It's not a UTI. So I am doing pelvic floor therapy because of all my UTIs, and it's helped immensely, in the last year. So yeah, I mean, Nobody talks about how UTI after UTI after UTI can actually damage the tissue within your bladder and your urethra and cause uncomfortable and lasting urinary symptoms. So, yeah, it's just something that's not discussed enough. And it's something that I was left to figure out on my own. Thankfully, I've been able to continue my research after I graduated college while I have my business, continue researching, continue speaking to doctors, scientists, PhD professors, and things like that, and just have these conversations because they're not talked about enough, they're not studied enough, they're not looked into enough. And so I spread that information through TikTok, through here, the podcast and everything. So yeah, that was my UTI hellhole story. I hope you guys resonated with it and know that you're not alone with all of your UTIs. If you are suffering with UTIs, you're not alone. I get how it feels. I hope that you guys can try out with clarity because it's truly changed my life. I'm my own customer. I stand by it. I believe in it. And it's helped so many of you. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.